Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So, in the last episode, if you remember, I did mention about, in fact, I did a demo on how to create a screen flow, right? So, what I'm going to do today, I will look at what I built last time, and more like a peer review, because normally what happens, right? You might be aware, when you build any flow, it often goes to a peer review, to maybe a design lead or to a senior engineer, right? So that's and I've done a lot of peer reviews, code reviews, flow reviews of many junior people, even the senior people, right? So I'm going to walk you through how I do a flow review, because it's very important that once you build a flow, you need to submit it for for the review process, so that the person who's looking at your flow might have a different opinion, might give you feedback on how you can improve on the things, right? So the first thing first, right? So in the last episode, I built a flow that is something called the user onboarding experience, and as you can see, that a lot of things I've done here, and lots of stuff going on here, right? Now, my first impression when I look at any of the existing flows, right, I will often look at um, the number of elements that's been put on the flow, right? So, as a good practice, it's often advisable not to put more than um, 25 elements. When I say elements or components, like this is one element and this is one element. So, if you are considering to build a flow which you believe might extend over 25 elements, then it's a good idea to split that into subflows, which is something I'm going to talk about, right? Now, the whole point of building a flow, as you know, right, is to drive an automation, right? But to drive an automation, you need to keep certain design principle into consideration. Like, flow is not just about drag and drop, right? It is a kind of a visual programming language. So similar to what you do in any programming language, you need to consider the concept of modularity. Now, why do you need the concept of modularity? That's because you might need to reuse that similar flows elsewhere, right? So, and the modularity always ensure you are using it's like a plug and play architecture. Like, you have one component, you can use it here, you can reuse it there. Okay, now coming back to this flow, right? The first thing when I do a peer review, when I do a code review, let me put it as a flow review, right? Just to make it uh, logical for this context. I look at the naming convention, which is very important. Like, if I open this naming convention, and I would say that the label has intro screen, and it has API name intro screen, and the description. It's very important for me when I do a flow review. I want to make sure that a developer or a functional consultant who built the flow uh, should include should have included the description. Description is very important. The reason why I believe it's important, let's assume you're on a holiday or you left an organization when someone else wants to, let's say 6 months down the line, wants to add extra functionality to an existing flow. They shouldn't get confused looking at the purpose of the specific component, right? There should be enough description to describe its functionality. So that's why it's very important. And also the API name is very important. You should always keep your the case consistent. If you're using camel case or you're using Pascal case, that's up to you, or the standards you follow, but please make sure you're consistent with it, right? These are small things, but it's important. And because we wanted to make sure that whatever automation you're building in an org, uh, we shouldn't be introducing any kind of a tech debt. So that's the core philosophy behind any kind of the code review or the flow review, right? So we have the screen which pretty much capture experience, which is fine, which is like a welcome screen. Then we have customer type selection. Now, this is I've been asked by one of the YouTuber that why can't we use record choice set? Obviously, we can use it. The only reason why I didn't use because I wanted to customize the choice I mean, record set, what normally happens, you can do that based on what you're getting from the object, but it's kind of makes it very difficult to customize the label name, what you want. So that's one of the reason why I've used this very simple choice set. Um, okay, now obviously the API name, you can see that there is an inconsistency here. If you look at it here, now you can see, um, okay, you see there is no underscore. So do you want it to put an underscore or you don't want to put an underscore? That's something you need to pay attention to, right? So you can make it underscore. If you make it consistent, that's up to you. Or if you remove it, right? So these are the inconsistency I notice. Look, I'm very picky when it comes to code review as well as a flow review, right? Because I wanted to make sure that whatever component, whatever code, whatever metadata we are putting in an org is consistent with our standards and designs we have in place, right? So that's one of the things I often pay very close attention to it. And it's just not about just building something, because we're not building a POC. In a POC, it's understandable you can make a quick and dirty working prototype to demonstrate to stakeholder, and you throw it away, right? But this is not a throwaway part. So if you come here, you can do that here. So, and the things which I noticed, right? I'm just walking you through. So I'm not going to go through everything, but the few things I normally pay attention to. Now, the get record type is interesting, right? Now, I'll be asking, what is the function of the get record type from a developer who built this flow? So if a developer comes to me and say, okay, so this record type functionality is about to retrieve the record types of a specific object. In this case, I presume account, right? Okay. So my question will be that, do we have any subflow? Have you got any subflow in place which uses the similar functionality? I mean, what I meant to say was that, do we have any existing functionality elsewhere which does the same thing, like getting a record type? So if the answer to that is no, now my question will be, do you think that it's getting used elsewhere? Or do you think that you have a use case where you're going to use more record type? For instance, like right now we have a requirement to get account. What happens if you have for contacts? Or what happens if you have for, let's say, another custom object? Are we going to drag and drop this component everywhere, or do you think it's better to put into a subflow, right? So that kind of questions I'll ask. And given this context, what we have here, where you can see that we are getting a record type here and we are filtering it, a double filter, and then we are using a decision statement. And inside the decision statement, we are using loops and loops. This doesn't look. I mean, it does the job, like I said in the last episode, right? There are different ways you can cook a chicken, right? If your intention is only to eat a chicken, right? So you can grill it, you can bake it, you can make a stew, you can make a kebab, you can make a shawarma out of it, whatever, right? That's up to you. Um, but in this case, we wanted to make sure that whatever uh, thing we are doing um, is consistent, and also it uh, it's not going to add any tech debt. Now, imagine you right now. For this flow context, for this business requirement, you only have two business record type, right? What happens if you have, let's say, five record type, right? Right now we have commercial account, individual. Tomorrow you might have, let's say, facility account. You have supplier account. We have, procurement account type, right? Are you gonna add? Are you gonna add this code every single where or every single place here? And are you going to add like three more extra filters? That seems to me a very, very bad design to begin with. Now, think about it, right? I understand the reason, right? You wanted to get the record type, you don't want to duplicate it, but this get record type is not getting called, twice here, right? It's called based on the pick list you select, right? So if you select one, you select it gonna go here. If you select the individual, gonna go here, right? So my analogy will be to move this and put it here and put it here. Okay, now you will say, okay, I can put it this one here. So if I say this to developer, most likely developer will say, okay, sweet. So I'll move this here according to you. I'll move this here, right? This, and then I'll move the collection filter down. I'll move the collection filter down. No, that's not what I said. I said to move this record type here and move this record type here so that we don't need this looping business what's going on here. Now, if you're a junior developer, that might confuse you. I said, I don't understand what you're trying to say. So what I'm trying to say here is, why don't you make a subflow? Okay. Now that's exactly what I'm going to show you how you can do that. So obviously we have a requirement that, and with an expectation that this will be reused elsewhere, not only on this flow, but anywhere, right? Okay. So how are we going to do that? Let's go back to our flow screen. My apologies if I'm speaking too fast. Don't know why I'm speaking too fast. It's Sunday. Maybe I'm too excited because it's Sunday. I don't know. I'll slow down, right? So what I'm trying to say, right? We wanted to build a subflow, right? Now, how are you going to build a subflow? That's pretty simple, right? You're going to come to this flow screen here, right? And I'm going to click on new flow. Now, which flow type are you going to use to build a flow subflow, right? That's a good question. So I'm going to use the start from scratch. I'm not worried about template. Now we have a screen flow. Obviously, I don't want a screen flow because get record type, it's a server process, right? I don't need any user interaction to get the record type. It's just a query. You're going to hit on a database and you get something out of it, right? Record trigger flow. I'm not triggering anything on an object level, right? It's not that I wanted to trigger something based on um, an insert or update or delete happen on an object. We're not talking about that. So this is not something I want to talk about. Schedule trigger flow. I'm not scheduling anything because I want it straight away. Platform event. I'm not triggering anything platform level. So, and I'm not talking about orchestration. So obviously the best choice what we have is an auto launch flow because it does not need a trigger and it's not a screen flow. So how we do that? We go here, click here. Okay, now obviously we are making it as a generic flow. So we can say get record. Okay, so get record type. Sorry. Okay, get record type. Uh, respect object. Now, which is that? Record type. Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, I need a developer name, and I also need S object type, right? Now, you must be wondering, shall I hard code it to account? And shall I hard code it to whatever? Or are you saying that shall I hard code it to account and I'll get to developer then I get two record type and I use the loop here and return me the record type ID here. Is that what you're trying to say? No, that's not what I'm trying to say. So obviously I don't want to hard code anything here and I want this value to flow through as an input. Now, how do you define an input? So I'll come here and I'll create a new resource and I will say variable and I will say as object value. Um, sorry. And this contains as object value as object API name data type. I'll make it a string. And now this is the magic here, available for input. So what I'm trying to do is that any flow which you make use of this flow will have an opportunity to pass an input to this flow, and this will be one of the input, right? So I'll pause this. Now I'm going to add new resource, and I want as a variable. Now, what is the variable you're after? And so this is the developer name, and this variable holds, oh, come on, goodness sake, holds the developer name. Now I want it as a text, yeah, and obviously I want it as an input, right? What's wrong here? Developer's name. Okay, so now what I'll do, I will use this as subject value, and I will use this as developer name equals, what's this? Developer name. Come on, this is stupid. Okay. Now only the first record automatically store. Oh no, I don't want to automatically store all records. Okay, you know what? Because it's going to be a generic one. So I wanted to automatically store all the fields, because what happens in other flows, you might separate a field, right? So I don't want to hard code it. So I assume that I'm getting all the fields from this. Okay. Now I'll save this, and what we should give a meaningful name, that is get record type ID. This flow will return record type ID based on the object type specified. Okay, that's great. And okay, now I will save this. Now, obviously, what's happening here, as you can see, that you're getting a record type, but that's fine. But I need to send the record ID back to as an output, right? Because we're getting an input. The inputs, there we're getting two inputs, right? One is the object name, which is account in this case, or could be anything, right? And another one is the developer name. So what I'll do, I will go here and I will create a new resource, and I will say record type ID. This this holds the record type ID of an object. This is interesting. Now, okay, now here's the magic, right? Remember, for the other two variables, I've ticked available for input because we are expecting an input from a calling flow. But in this case, we are returning an output back. So this is an output. So I could say available for output. And now here in this case, I'll just close it. I'll say assignment. Yep. And assign record type ID. This will assign record type ID. Okay. So this is the record type. Obviously, it's a single one. Yep. Save. Okay. Now let me debug it, right? Because to see if it works or not. Now I don't know the name of the record type here. So what I'll do, I'm obviously going to look the business account to see if it works. And we'll say this, and I will say account. Yeah. And let's see what happens, right? If it works or not. If it doesn't, then we might have to fix the issue. Voila, we're getting a record type. So that works. So I will activate it. And so this is fantastic, right? And what I'll do, I will close this and I will refresh it, reload it, in other words, and let's do some modification to it, which is fantastic, right? Okay, so what I need here, I will need, let me go here and I will remove some of the variables. Obviously, I will do the new resource here and I will say the record type ID. And okay, if I do underscore, just to make it consistent, so this will hold the record type ID. Data type, I will use it as text, and I don't care about the available for input and output because I'm not using it anywhere. Now, obviously, what I need here, um, this is the screen. Now, I will use it here, and I will use the subflow. And in the subflow, which one is it? The get record type ID. And this one will say get record type ID for business account. Yep. And get record type ID for business account, right? Now, as you can see that we got input variable, and which you remember that the input variable I've created. So obviously I need a developer name here and I'll pass it here. And obviously I need an account. So that is account here, which is great. And now I have to manually assign the value here, the record type ID. So it's the record type. Oh no, just stupid. Okay. Sorry about that. Now, if I save as, let me save as a new version of a flow. Okay. Okay, I'll save it. Um, what I'll do, I will do the same here as well. And before I do that, I just need to look for the person account. Now, subflow, get record type ID, get record type ID, sorry, for person account, get record type for person account. Obviously, I need developer. What's the person account? You know, it's interesting that I haven't worked with the flow for over a year now because, like I said, right, the place where I do consulting as an architect, I don't normally get to do much hands-on, right? I give strategic advice, design pattern advice, and it's one of the biggest government agencies in New Zealand. And what makes it very interesting, Red, I'm the I'm the I'm the main Salesforce architect in the entire organization, right? So any decision that needs to happen, I take part in that conversation. And let's say we have a vendor resource who works with us, need to bring in the architecture paper, I chair those papers. So this is, such a great opportunity, I would say, right? I mean, I often ask people, where would you find such a great role in Salesforce ecosystem where you have the ownership of the entire Salesforce architecture of a government agency, right? This is such a privileged position to be in. And so that's why I'm absolutely grateful for such an opportunity. And because I could, because I get an opportunity to make the positive impact, and I have a lot of attachment towards the Salesforce ecosystem. I mean, it just that because I've been involved in the Salesforce community for a while, and I can see its positive advantage. It's a great product, right? But that being said, we have HubSpot. HubSpot is an interesting product as well, right? And I would highly encourage you guys to check it out, at least from a small industry perspective. That's HubSpot is really great, right? And then we have Microsoft CRM. Then we have Oracle. Um, they have their own ERP on top of it, right? So there are a lot of commercial products out there, which is very, which is interesting, I would say, right? And I'm not a I'm not the kind of person, right, who says, "Oh, look, Salesforce is the only thing you should consider." Now, that's not, that's never been my position, because I'm flexible, right? Whatever technology that happens to be in place, and as long as it's adding value, I go for it, right? Sorry, I digress. So, but I thought might as well, talk about something while I'm doing the same repetitive task here. Okay, so what I've done, right, as you noticed, I've added these to Subflow here. So now let's tidy up a bit, right? So what I'll do, I don't want this one. Delete element. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry. I have to delete this first. Okay. I can't delete this one. So there is okay. So what I'll do, I will delete this one. Now, can I delete it? No, I can't delete it. Interesting, right? So which is really good, right? Now, obviously it tells you where you have dependency, which is fantastic. So what I'll do, I'll come here. I will say record type ID, because remember that we have only one variable which is storing this ID, which is fantastic, right? And obviously um, record type. Now you can say that's great. Now hopefully I can delete this one. If not, then we'll see. Now what is it happening? Okay. All right. So what I'll do, I'll delete this one, and I will delete this one, and I will delete this one. I will delete this one. Yeah. I will delete this one. I will delete this one. I will delete this one. Right. Okay. Let's go here. Let's see what we can delete from here. Um, current. Okay. I will delete this one. And because it's very important that you clean your mess in Flow, because I've seen a lot of times people delete the stuff, but they don't come here and delete anything, right? So your XML obviously end up in containing a lot of unwanted stuff. And then when you run a static code analysis, it started to complain. So this is some kind of a exercise to clean what we have. Commercial, uh, these are the subflows. Excuse me. These are subflows we have. Come on. And I presume that is good. Okay. Now, obviously, I'll save it. Right. Now, there's one thing you might have missed, right? I mean, I did this, I created Subflow, but the most important part, which I have seen so many times, which get missed, that is, let's go back to this one, right? You've created a, let me open the flow again. This is the most common mistake I've seen people often do when they create flow, and which is adding the fault path, right? Now, what happens if something goes wrong, right? Where are you capturing that information? That's where the fault path often comes in the picture. You can, like, if you're using a logger, you can use a logger. I don't have any logger here, but maybe I was logging. I don't have any logger here, but generally, I use Nebula logger for some stuff. Then you can, I'm not going to save it. So this is how you can do it, right? So you can come here, you can create a default path, and where you can hook up a logger and get the exception uh, from the API, right? Excuse me. So that's the way you should do it, and the same thing applies to here, right? So you need to come here and add the default path. It's very important, right? If I ever see a flow which contains no fault path on any kind of a CRUD operation, I will not accept the flow, right? I consider that as a tech debt because you're adding a flow smell. And because what happens, because then you're not thinking about the exception criteria, and is a very bad practice, right? So and the like I said, right, peer reviewing a flow is very important, and that's what I call it as a flow review. Now you must also ask another question, right? Okay, now Salesforce do not really enforce much on unit tests, but should I be writing a unit test for the flow? And the answer to the question is you should, right? Just because you don't have to in certain scenario, I don't think that that's a good practice, right? You should write unit tests because unit test is a gateway, or it's a process that you have in place, which kind of help you identify any kind of exceptions that you're introducing to your current flow or to your current code, right? Without unit tests, you don't have that security layer to make you feel confident to say, hey, any further changes that's going to happen to this flow will not break the existing business logic, right? So that's why, in my honest opinion, having a unit flow is very important. Okay, now I've done this, so let me debug it to see if this damn thing works, right? Obviously, if it doesn't work, then we need to fix it. Why? I will say commercial, right? We'll say next. What name I will say? I will say TX Society. They're like Elon Musk. Strange names he's given to his child. People are interesting, right? So okay, now now I'll go back. Change input. I want to run for individual. Now, what name I should give? Something. Yeah, I don't know. So Jose. I'll put some Spanish name. Jose Lopez. Um, phone number, whatever. Right? Don't care much. Um, okay. So we created two records. Let's see if we got it. Um, so recently viewed. There you go. Jose Lopez and TX Society. How interesting is that, right? Now, you tell me if this one is more cleaner or the previous one, right? Obviously, I knew that I would get a reaction from people to say, why do you have lots of loops, right? I do not like to do that kind of programming. The reason why I demonstrated in the previous exercise, just to make you understand there are different ways you can do things, and I've seen so many times people using that approach. And also it's an opportunity for me to demonstrate the use of subflow. Now, this is a clean approach, right? Because you have a component base where you can hook and plug and play, right? And you can use this subflow for contacts. You can use this for opportunity. You can use this for pretty much any custom object out there, right? And yeah, so that's pretty much I wanted to cover in this episode. Hope you guys have an amazing Sunday. Adios.